the downtown riverfront, and I mostly assist with the employers in that 10-county service area. Most of you are probably more familiar with our American Job Centers, which are located in your counties. We have 5 that are located in the 10-county area. Career centers are not specific to address, so employees, claimants, employers can visit whichever career center is closest to them. We're not address specific, and we don't serve based by somebody's address. So we basically make referrals with the employees or the claimants to those centers for that hands-on, one-on-one assistance if they need that. The career center locations, obviously, we're like everyone. Our front doors are shut. We are still inside taking phone calls and assisting as best we can from that way, but we're limited in our services. We're having to rethink how we produce and how we're going to serve the community as well, looking into how to deliver our resume and our interviewing and workshops and things like that we also offer at the career center level. We also offer assistance to individuals that might be interested in going back to school to upgrade skills or get new skills, retrain. That information is also available to the participants, and we're doing, trying to do virtual interviews and collect documents via download and upload, things like that. So we're having to rethink our processes as well, but the staff are there to assist in providing those services. And then, of course, we work with employers. Another hat that I wear is with on-the-job training grants, incumbent worker grants, additional assistance to the employers if they're looking to train their existing employees and upgrade their skills as well. So we do a lot of different things at the career centers. We have 9 mandated state partner agencies such as Voc Rehab, Adult Education, of course, Department of Labor, Department of Human Services, all of those, Adult Education, Job Corps, they're all partner agencies, food stamps. So when we're assisting someone at the career center and they make comments that may lead us to think that they need a referral to a partner agency, we refer them over to those partner agencies, and then they can get co-enrolled, and we coordinate those services and try to braid our funds so that obviously we have to be mindful, since it's taxpayer dollars, that we're not funding out for the same thing, and so we have to coordinate that as well. But a lot of that goes on in our career centers, and some of those partner agencies are located in some of our centers. Our comprehensive centers are Athens and Chattanooga. Our affiliate centers are our smaller offices. They mostly have the workforce development staff. They're located in Dayton, Marion, and Cleveland.
Okay. So a lot of this is kind of unprecedented times for all of us. People that have never had to lay off employees before found themselves having to do that. And now that we're kind of into this recovery or starting to reopen phase, I wouldn't call it recovery yet, but Cleveland is starting to kind of reopen a little bit. How would you counsel an employer that has tried to bring employees back and the employees don't want to come back because of the additional government federal supplement to unemployment?
Wow, you started off with the best question.
Well, I think that's something that's on a lot of people's minds right now.
It absolutely is. We started getting asked that question about 3 weeks ago for employers that were preparing to reopen, and that was obviously on their minds because they could see as well, depending on what someone's benefits were, that they possibly were receiving more unemployment funding than they were in a regular paycheck. And so that has been the hot topic for the past few weeks. And the state has worked on, and I will actually, Bernadette, provide you with a link that we can send out to all of your employers. I've actually pushed some things out. You guys should be getting some of that information, but the state did and has developed a COVID-19 unemployment website page that started almost in that very first week. It was about a page and a half, and now they've just continued to add information there. How we've actually been handling that, with those employers asking those questions is, first and foremost, the employers are in control of their employees. Any employee can file for unemployment. We can't tell someone they can or cannot file. Once they do, their employers are notified that someone has filed an unemployment claim against them. And then the employer, depending on really in the beginning, if they've assisted with the claims process and providing spreadsheets for approval, those claims are typically processed and approved off those spreadsheets. But once they get to that point of bringing someone back, they have to handle that just in the same way that they would if we weren't in a COVID situation. If you allowed someone to be off for a week, let's just say it was for vacation, and it's time for them to come back and they are a no-show. How would your HR department handle that? Would you contact that individual? Would you ask them for doctor's excuses or notes? You should go through your normal HR process of how you would handle it. Is that person a no-show now? Did they self-terminate and just quit their position? Do they have a valid reason for not returning? Are you going to give them points until they do return? You should follow your normal HR process for that individual not showing up. Now, there are on that the state's website with the Q&A page that do address what if the employee responds this way. And for instance, if they say that they are told to quarantine by their physician for whatever reason, that same process, you would accept that documentation, ask them for documentation, and then you would need to upload that to the state. They've also put a link out there on their site that if someone refuses and do not have a valid reason for not returning to work, because having a job to return to, having work to return to, and receiving additional unemployment benefits is not a valid reason for staying unemployed, and that the state does need to be notified. The link takes you to what we call a form field, a stack field, where you're basically filling out like an application. You're answering questions about the employee. What was their last day work? What were their approval time frame? When were they asked to return? What was their reason for not returning? And a PDF to be able to upload documents to report that. The employee at the same time, when they're filing their weekly certifications, there is a question that asks them if they did refuse work in the previous week. The employee must be honest and say yes, and they've actually tweaked those weekly certification questions as well that almost, I don't want to say forced, but it does make the employee have to report that yes, they did refuse that employment. Was it part-time, full-time? There's some additional questions there. And so if those two things conflict, if they're saying no, they didn't refuse work, and then the employer submits a ticket that says they did, when the state does their investigation, if there was an overpayment, then they will reach out to the employee and request those funds to be returned.
Are employees having to go out and look for work during this time, or are these special circumstances?
Right. So whenever the CARES Act went into effect at the beginning of April, obviously everyone saw and heard on the news the governors, and they waived the wait week, they waived the job search activity. There is a guidance there, though, for anyone to remain what we call job attached. They have to have a return date within 16 weeks of their last day work. So employees and employers were encouraged, if the employer used the spreadsheet to submit the claims, then there's a column for them to put in a return to work date, and they were encouraged to extend it that 16-week time frame. And the reason was, one, it does keep them with an open claim for that 16 weeks, and it also keeps the employee job attached so that they don't have to do those job searches. If the employee filed their own claim, then they were encouraged to do the same, to put in a return to work date if their employer for sure, was bringing them back to work. So there had to be some communication there, but by law, they remain job attached and don't have to job search as long as they have that end date of 16 weeks. Once they get beyond that, then they are considered a permanent layoff and they are required to job search. Or if they self-terminate and don't return to work, and then the employer notifies, then they would be required to job search.
Okay. Are they receiving that extra $600 federal supplement automatically?
So the way you receive that benefit, that's actually stimulus money. That's the federal money. It's not tied to unemployment whatsoever.
Okay.
So when an individual files their unemployment claim, they first have to go through that process of being determined eligible. When an employee files a claim or when the spreadsheet's uploaded that creates the claim, the employee receives what's called a monetary determination letter. That determination letter looks at their previous 18 months of work history to determine what their benefit amount is going to be. And it's a calculation of their first 4 of their last 6 working quarters. So typically, if someone filed a claim right now, they're in their 6th quarter, which is their working quarter. Those wages aren't included. The quarter before that, which was January to March, is the lag quarter. It's not included. So basically, employees that are, or claimants that are filing now, their wages are based on January of 2019 to December 2019. And then there's an internal calculation based on if one quarter is higher in wages than the other, and that's how they determine the weekly benefit amount. The weekly benefit amount maximum is $275. It could be less, again, depending on that wage benefit.
Okay.
And then if they're eligible for at least one UI dollar, so as long as they're eligible for one UI dollar of that that their maximum is $275, then they're eligible for the $600 stimulus.
Okay. Can people work part-time and still get unemployment?
Yes, and there's an internal calculation on that as well. So if someone is eligible for the maximum $275, the maximum work allowance is 25% of that. So it's $68.75. So if someone is only eligible for $200, then you would do 25% of that, which is $50. So the minimum that they could have in a work allowance is $50. The maximum that they can have is the $68.75. And how that calculates is anything earned over the $68.75 is then deducted from the $275. So they still can't earn more than $275. So it's an internal math calculation, but if they earned $200 and that's $132 over their 68 work allowance, that $132 is now taken from the $237 and they get the difference.
Okay. Are they still getting, those people still getting the 600 on top of that?
As long as they're eligible for one UI dollar.
Okay. Wow. I did not know that. So why was the 16 weeks kind of just an arbitrary number?
No, it's in the legislation somewhere.
Okay.
It's part of the law that it's 16 weeks is the maximum that they can remain. Unemployment is 26 weeks, which is 6 months. So when you file a claim, you start your benefit year. So let's just say that all these individuals that are filing claims either in March or early April, and let's just say April 1, if you file a claim April 1, 2020, your benefit year is April 1, 2020 to April 1, 2021.
Mm-hmm.
In between there, you can have what are called add claims. So a good example actually would be to back up and say if an employer does a 1-week shutdown for Thanksgiving and their employees go file a claim for that week, that becomes week 1. And at that time, they would have established a wait week. Then if they got laid off again at Christmas for 2 weeks, then that was week 1. And now let's just say Christmas is around week 6. So on week 6, they create an add claim. And now they actually get the 2 checks because they established their wait week. So they would have gotten 2 checks. Now here we are in April, and they're doing another add claim, and they're around week 20, week 21. And so they can draw 26 checks in their 52 weeks. So they've already drawn 2 at Christmas, so now they really have 24 checks left. And that's a true example. We have an employer that's actually happening with his employees, that they did their first claim in November, a second claim for 2 weeks in December, and now they're doing a third claim in March. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. It's just that they've already had 2 payments out of their 26 weeks for their 52-week benefit year.
Okay. Lisa, do you have questions?
Yeah, and Beth, you might have already touched this, but so how many weeks is this? So how many weeks can they stay on unemployment? I know that it kind of changed, didn't it, for this situation.
Yeah, and you're talking about, and I need a drink.
Okay. Don't we all?
Yeah, that's for the weekend. I have a hot tub and a bottle of wine waiting on me every Friday night. So, 2 bottles this past weekend. It was a rough week last week. So what you're kind of talking about, Lisa, is the pandemic side of it. And
Right.
so to kind of shift gears a little bit with traditional unemployment, you guys are used to an employer that's laying somebody off they're eligible for UI, so they're eligible for stimulus. If we kind of get into a self-employed, if somebody files a regular unemployment claim and they're not eligible monetarily, meaning they don't have any of those wages in their 18 months, and for all the self-employed, that's going to happen because they don't have wages in there. So they roll into what's called PUA assistance, which is the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. It is a lesser amount than the traditional UI. There's a percentage going on there as well. But those employees are going to have to upload 1099s or tax returns in order for the state to be able to determine what their benefit amounts are, or to see that they had wages in that benefit year. So what you're talking about with an extension is under and I hate to swim in alphabet soup, but we do right now. We have what's called a PEUA, a Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Assistance. And so an individual that, like my example before, that somebody already has a claim in place and they may have either drawn out or they finish out those 26 weeks from a previous unemployment claim, now they don't have any funds in their benefits, so now they may roll over into that PEUA assistance. All of those, both of those two types of claims are right now still like in the process because it's a system change. And for instance, with the self-employed, I can see their UI claim that they filed and that they were monetarily ineligible, which is normal. Now I see a second claim right under that for the PUA. I've not seen anybody with the PEUA, but I have had a conversation with an individual that is possibly going to happen for him. At this point, all I can tell people, and all we are telling people, is that you have to go through those steps, and the latter two are much more lengthy because of the system having to create a new claim and reprocess. A lot of people jumped in the system early on and filed those self-employed claims, and now they're being asked to redo a claim because now they have an actual claim for a self-employed person to fill out, when back before they did not. So there's some additional steps and hoops they're going to have to jump through. We're just asking them to be patient and letting them know, I can see you've made it this far, and just continue to do their weekly certifications. The weekly certification is what drives the payment. So if somebody files a claim and never certifies, they're never going to get a payment. And right now the system will let them get 5 weeks behind. And that actually was extended from 2 weeks to 5 weeks simply because of the volume of claims and the state being behind on approvals. They weren't able to get things happen in the 2-week time frame that we normally did. So it was kind of a window that stretched it out for us too. So if somebody needs to do multiple certifications, it will let them do up to 5 in a row.
Okay. Hey, Denise, I'm going to unmute you so that you can ask your question, if it will let me. Well, okay, there you go, Denise. Go ahead and ask your question.
Hey, Beth, I know you've got a lot going on right now. I was curious about if you could comment on the Relaunching America's Workforce Act at the federal level, the $15 billion. And
I have no idea. No.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. There's the question. There's the answer.
Sorry, I'm not. Yeah, that's somebody's pay grade way above mine that we may, and I can get you in touch with somebody that might be able to answer that question. If you guys will submit them, I can forward those on and get some answers, but I personally don't.
Okay. We do work with, we do have Tamar Jacoby. I can't remember what the organization she's with. She's the one who's providing us the updates. But I wanted to, and that was at the national level. So I wanted to hear what, if you guys are looking at the state level, because it is going to give some monies to the state, more WIOA money, and also give you more flexibility with that. And there'll be money that goes to the governor also. And just kind of, if you guys are looking at that or planning for that, I know Cleveland State's already contacted us about some potential, thinking ahead in some potential incumbent worker training, and then also some dislocated worker training. And so we're trying to work with them to develop some curriculum and some things. But I was just wondering if at the state level, if you've gotten any feedback.
Well, and I'm still at the local level. So, but Michelle Holt, and I know you know Michelle, my director, Michelle and them have been in conversations and are probably attending the same Zoom meetings and that you have been a part of. I've been so buried with unemployment. I've gotten on very few additional trainings about anything right now. But I'm sure Michelle, you could probably direct your questions to her. I do know that she has been working on her and Stephen Dunn, and I know you know Stephen, they're developing some, having to do the grant requests and ask for funding and put some things together at our local level, but she would probably know more about what's going on at the state level.
Okay.
And Beth, you had mentioned earlier about a website with employer information and frequently asked questions. Do you know what that website is?
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It's the easiest way to get to it is it's tn.gov/workforce/COVID-19. When you get to the main website, you're going to see a very colorful map of Tennessee. And it's showing, let me move my laptop so I can scroll down and see. So basically, and it shows you on that screen the number of claims that were filed each week. And they start at week 10, which is the calendar year week 10, whenever claims started upticking. That week 10, which was March 14th, we only had 2,700 claims submitted. A week later, it went up to 39,000. A week later, it went to 95,000. A week later, it went to 116,000 for the week of April 4th. And then it ticked back down. We had 74,000, and then the week of the 18th, 68. So that main screen there is just and then for our southeast area, we
can send a link to everybody with that website address on it.
And you'll see at the bottom, there's an employer box, an employee box, a Q&A box, a self-employed box. All of those behind each one of them are specific questions that just like you guys are asking, and the state is responding and putting additional links there. I have pushed this website more than anything. I don't do any of the printed materials. I found that once I printed and tried to PDF something, the state would change it. So it's better just to review the link. They do update it daily, and you'll see at the bottom a revised date on the pages. So you just have to kind of pay attention to that as well, because sometimes it's a question they just add in, like the link about how to submit a ticket when someone refuses work. It might get buried in the middle of the page and you would overlook it. So you just have to kind of eyeball it every now and then.
Mm-hmm. I noticed you mentioned a couple of times the use of a spreadsheet. So is that the easiest way to submit your employee lists?
It kind of depends on the volume. The intent of the mass spreadsheet, and it's actually called a partial spreadsheet. There's really two. The mass layoff spreadsheet is for permanent layoffs. It's just a list that says when these employees file, approve them, because we're conceding that they were laid off, and then it has a layoff date for that column. The partial claims spreadsheet, it has a lot more information. It's actually column A through X, and you're providing a date of birth and an email address. And this spreadsheet will actually create the claimant's registration if they're not registered in JobServe, and it will also create the claim. If they're already registered, then it does just create the claim. The intent with the spreadsheet is if you have 150 employees, we can upload a spreadsheet in about 30 minutes and get 150 claims like that. as opposed to having 150 individuals going into the system, and one, bogging it down, and two, actually they just file their claims wrong, and it's wrong from the get-go, and then we're having to fix claims. But with the spreadsheet, they get uploaded correctly from the front end, and now we just have to get them to do their certifications when they're supposed to. So the spreadsheet, the partial claim spreadsheet, is the preferred method. If you have, this is my rule of thumb, guys, but if you have 20 or less employees and you're laying them off next week and you don't have time to do the spreadsheet, they can file their own claims. I can provide you with flyers and instruction pages that can help them get through it, the do's and don'ts, if you will. But the spreadsheet is the cleaner way. Several weeks back, they had 1,700 spreadsheets in the email queue. So we were behind, and you guys out may have heard from other employers how spreadsheets weren't getting uploaded. That's true. It really was a bogged down system especially that week of April 4th, when we had 116,000 claims go in 1 week, and a lot of that was from spreadsheet uploads, and they'd had to take the system completely down and do uploads in the middle of the night because it was timing out and they couldn't get a spreadsheet to finish loading. So we're past that now. And so, yes, that is the preferred method, but the employees can still file their own claim. If they do, they must file their claim in the first week that they're laid off. One of the misunderstandings about unemployment is, oh, I'll file today. Well, I was unemployed last week, but I'll just do it today. Well, the week you file your claim is the week it starts on that Sunday. So if somebody files a claim today on Wednesday, it starts this past Sunday, regardless if they've been laid off for 2 or 3 weeks. The spreadsheet, however, if it gets uploaded 2 weeks late, hence why we stretched that out 5 weeks, if it's uploaded 2 weeks late, it will backdate to that original start date because it is the employer's spreadsheet that says, yes, they were laid off. The employee can't say I was laid off 2 weeks ago and start a claim 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And the state, if the employer submits a spreadsheet and they tell their employees, do not file a claim, we're doing it with a spreadsheet, and those employees go file their own claims, they will not backdate them to the correct date for them if they file the wrong week.
So if an employee doesn't trust their employer to do that filing, it's not to their benefit.
If they don't follow instructions,
Yeah.
they're not going to backdate them. And they did attempt to do that in the first 2 or 3 weeks, and it was unbelievable how many employees just did not follow instructions.
Okay. Lisa, you have any questions from the participants?
Oh, I've asked them. If
You've
anybody else
asked
has any, feel free to chat them.
Yeah, does anybody have any other questions? We've got about 12 people on the call.
Ralph does. Hello, Ralph. Got to unmute you.
Wait a minute. Go ahead, Ralph.
Just curious, we did receive the PPP loan from the SBA, and it covers about 8 weeks of payroll for us. But we're looking at our revenues now, and we are fully expecting to have to make our first round of layoffs probably after that. And my question is, are you expecting another spike in unemployment filings after people use some of that PPP money up?
I think that would, and that's a good valid question, that it's probably could happen. I'm not sure if it would be a spike all at one time, since it would depend on when they were approved, right? And whenever, because I have gotten a lot of calls about not getting the approval yet, and in the first wave and it being in the second wave. So yes, I think we could see an uptick in claims whenever that funding runs out on that side again. I hope it's not a spike as far as the volume that we've had now. A lot of the employers that I've been working with, a lot of them did recalls back last week or this week. So I know a lot of the majority, and I work mostly with manufacturers, Denso, Lazy Boy, E&E, Creative Foam, your manufacturers. I've had some smaller ones in the area, but a lot of them are bringing individuals back last week and this week, but doesn't mean that, you know, they won't go back into another layoff situation later on. And Lisa, I think on that one question you asked me about that PEU, or we were talking about that extension, what I saw was 13 weeks. If someone had exhausted their original 26 weeks, or if it was running out, it would extend just another 13.
Okay.
I've not really had anybody, just that one person that fell in that category, but I think they've created that in case somebody gets in that situation. There may be more out there, but just I've not had dealings with a lot of people.
Okay. You have anything else come up, Lisa?
No. I don't
Is there
have
anything else, Beth, that you want to add before we close this?
The only thing as far as the questions I sent you that I don't think you guys have asked, there is a 10% tax on unemployment and on the 600. We've been getting a lot of, where's my 600? I only got 540. Well, they took a 10% tax, and that's $60. And then if you get the full 275, they take 28 off that. So it is 10% tax, and it is default to take the tax. If the employee does not want to take the tax now, they have to go out on their own individual accounts under their profile and change, or excuse me, under their unemployment services, and change that withholding to no. Just know that when they do that, they do get a 1099 next year with their income tax. This is reportable income as well. So they will have to report the income, and if they chose to change it to no, they will pay the tax on it next year whenever they file.
Okay.
That is one other misunderstanding. And then how to stop your claim. There's 2 ways to do it. You can go in and report. For instance, if last week was my first week back to work and I worked all last week and made $500, I would go in the system today, do a certification, say, yes, I worked last week, and yes, I made $500. That's excessive to my 275, so it's going to turn my claim off. That's the clean way. That's the preferred way. The easy way is just to stop certifying. Like I said earlier, the certification is what drives the payment. So if you don't certify, then the system will automatically turn it off. And again, it was 2 weeks, but now it's 5.
Okay. Do you continue to get payments over those 5 weeks? No,
ma'am, you have
you
to
only
go
get
in and
payments.
right. And you can only certify 1 week. And it's always, the other misunderstanding is when I certify today, I'm answering questions about what happened last week. And so it's asking me, did you work last week? Did you have earnings last week? Did you refuse work last week? Did you go back to school? Did you take vacation? Join the military? There's like 8 same questions every week, but it only lets you answer those questions for that week. So if somebody's behind 3 weeks for whatever reason, it would go all the way to the first week and work its way to the current week and get you caught up. But that's what creates the actual approval for a payment.
Okay. Hold on, Shannon, let me unmute you. Go ahead. No. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, just a question kind of on that same subject. So employees aren't allowed to double dip. So, you know, they apply for unemployment, they're receiving funds, then they go back to work. If they continue to receive those unemployment funds, is it just a matter of time before the state figures out what's going on and then they'll have to repay those funds? Right.
So if the employer reports that the individual's returned to work, and they're not required to, but if that individual continues to draw, the employers, when they submit their quarterly wage reports to the state for tax purposes, eventually it will catch up to them. They'll receive a letter from the state that says there was an overpayment. We actually had one this morning where they just misunderstood that which week they were certifying for, and they didn't report earnings. And so it'll actually take that back off of their next check. So, but if somebody has stopped certifying, then it would be a repayment, and there's in the unemployment services section of their account, there's a repayment plan. They have to pay back a minimum of $50 a month, or they can choose to pay it all back, but they have to set up a payment plan to give that money back to the state. And it does charge interest and adds it on if they don't. I've looked at about 5 claims over the past month and a half where unfortunately it does label it as fraud if someone doesn't report wages when they did work and earned wages. And so I've seen about 5 fraud claims from 2006 through 2018, and they owe about $4,000 to $5,000, and the state is withholding to pay that back.
Oh.
So it will catch up. At some point, those wages do hit the system, and it matches and shows, hey, there's a double dip to your comment, and it will ask for it back.
Okay. Did I answer your question, Shannon?
You did. Thank you.
I think the big misunderstanding for a lot of employers is they're worried about the employees that would be able to do that. It might not get them now, but it really will. It'll eventually catch up to them, and they'll have to pay those funds back to us.
Mm-hmm. I just want to note too that we are recording this. I know Beth's gone over so much information, and we are recording it, and we'll post it, send a link and post it to our YouTube channel after this is over. So if there was something specific you want to go back and watch again. So if we don't have any other questions, I want to thank Beth for her time today. I know she's super busy and we really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for attending.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.